Hi guys, my name is Kharana Prasad and I'll be presenting to you the Stanford Prison Experiment. Let's start off with our researcher. Our researcher here, Dr. Philip Zimbardo. He is a psychologist and a professor at Stanford University. He conducted this experiment in 1971. Philip Zimbardo, he was interested in the study of Milgram, whether the person role would influence their behavior or not, and a question about obedience, power dynamic, and abuse of power. He wanted to explore this question furthermore, so he set up this experiment at Stanford. Next is the stimulated prison. The prison was set up at the basement at Stanford University. The prison was designed to be as realistic as possible. There was a uniform for the guards, and there were certain rules and regulations. Zimbardo and his team interviewed 70 participants at Stanford who were willing to conduct this experiment with them for 14 days and they would pay like $15 a day. They wanted to make sure that they chose the brightest and the most mentally sound participant as possible. After narrowing down their participants to 24, the researchers then decided to flip a coin and assign their roles. Half of the participants would be prisoners and half would be guards. The researchers then set up this experiment at the basement. They were very serious about treating the experiment like a simulation. Prisoners were arrested in public and taken into the prison. They were even booked, fingerprints, and strip searched, like in these pictures. Zimbardo team also gave prisoner number that they would meant to use instead of their real names. They claimed that it would help give prisoners a sense of anonymity and help the experiment. God had pretty much free range on how they could treat prisoners, although they had two main rules. The first one be that the guard could not hit the prisoner, and the guard could not put prisoner in solitary confinement or the hold for more than an hour. Zimbardo also played the role of prison superintendent. His graduate student and research partner also played a role as a member of the parlor board and the prison warden. Prisoners were tasked with certain activities like writing a letter home to their visitors and making a case to the parlor board whether about they could should be let off or not. Guard also subject the prisoner to count in which they force the prisoner to do jumping jack, push-up, and degrading tests. Moving on to our ethical concern here. It did not take long for the guard to abuse their powers. Within one day, only one day, a guard hit one of the prisoners with his nightstick. Moving on to the next day, the second day, the prisoners would try to rebel and the bed was taken away. To punish the prisoner, the guard tried to fire extinguishers into their cell. Guard not only used the physical abuse but also used psychological abuse, including sleep deprivation to punish and intimidate the prisoner throughout the studies. The prisoner were forced to wear dressing and stocking all along the whole time. Since the study had ended, this experiment was compared to the action of the Abu Ghraib detention centers. Very quickly, the guard started to abuse their power again. The prisoner started to spiral on the third day. Prisoner 68612 started to cry and scream uncontrollably. To avoid potential psychological damage and the lawsuit, he was let go. The next day, two other prisoners were let go. One had refused to eat, so they had to be let go. On the fifth day, Zimbardo's girlfriend, also known as his former student, came to visit him at the experiment. Zimbardo and his team had been monitoring this experiment 24/7. She saw the horror of this and decided to break up with him immediately if he didn't end this experiment. So the next day, on the sixth day, Zimbardo ended the experiment. This experiment showed the world just how quickly people can abuse the power when it's given to them. But it remained as one of the most controversial experiments and the most infamous social psychological experiment. There are a few reasons why. Moving on to impact and controversy. The first obvious impact is that the prisoners will suffer a long-term psychological damage and the stress and drama so much that they couldn't endure this experiment. Even though Zimbardo claimed that none of the participants has suffered long-term psychological consequence, but you can guess that it might not be true. It is controversial. But in more recent years, critics have also come forward to say that the results were not as natural as Zimbardo claimed, and his team may wanted used to think like this experiment is good, but no, it's not. Transcript and audio recording at Stanford Prison Experiment show that Zimbardo team coaches the guard. They told them to be tough for the sake of this experiment. Even the prisoners may have been faking their responses. Prisoner 8612, who is most well known for his blood curdling and burning up inside, he said, has come forward to say that his time in this experiment was more like an improv exercise. Many critics have been linked the experiment to a drama rather than a legitimate psychology experiment. That's it for today. Thank you for listening.